Thank you very much. Would you kindly put up the presentation, please? Right, while they're putting it up, thank you very much. I'm very glad to cover for the senior minister. I would like to talk a little bit about the future. I think we've been talking in bits and pieces. From the political angle, we've been talking about the future. And I would like to talk a little bit about the future and the power that future has in terms of our thinking and our present. I personally believe that it's imagination that we lack. And I don't mean just in Pakistan, but also across political horizons, to imagine the world that is not. I mean, there were no nation states. You just look over your shoulders, and you don't have to go too far back when there were no nation states. There were no multilateral bodies where you could walk in and negotiate anything. And all of these things have happened over a very short period of time. And I think the most important thing to celebrate is the power that humans have of imagineering, of thinking what is not, and then putting the building blocks for what it would take. Can you move to the next slide, please? I see a lot of people here my age. How many of you have seen Star Trek, if you remember, the first generation, Mr. Spock and Data and all of those? Oh, you couldn't have seen it. You're too young for that, the lady out there. But there are older people, you know, hags like myself, which I'm sure have seen the first generation of Star Trek. And what do you remember from Star Trek? I mean, I remember I didn't even know the language. I didn't even know English. And the television in Pakistan was black and white. We used to dash, we used to run to the television, you know, in an awe, like in Disneyland. And we didn't even know at that point in time that Disneyland existed, that there was something called, we knew about Mickey Mouse, but didn't know about Disneyland, not at least my brothers. And we would be like in an awestruck, like this, looking at Star Trek. And what do you remember from Star Trek? Anyone? Any volunteers? Beam me up. What else do you remember? New brave world where no man has dared to go. What else? Sorry? Sorry? Yes, absolutely. What else? No. Talk about the things that were in Star Trek, not the concepts. You guys are philosophers. What? Aliens. And Spock himself, who was, I think, a human and a Vulcan. I don't remember exactly what he was, but I think he was half Vulcan, half human. Now, go to the next slide. And see, everything that you saw in Star Trek became a reality before the third season or the fourth season was over. That little thing that they held in their hand, the transponder that they pulled up and said, "Beam me up, Scotty," that gave its way to a cell phone. The little thing where you pressed the button and you had that coffee just coming down, that gave its way to microwave. And Spock was Dolly the sheep. Within a decade, you had the genome of Dolly the sheep figured out and expressing it in the lab. And what is it that we were unable to make? What is that great man who owns this airline company, Virgin Atlantic, who can take you out for $1 million into the space? You can actually take a family trip this summer. So much for where no man would dare to go. And I basically worked with a company which was controlling from, Arkansas or Nebraska or California, rover on Mars. And this all is dated. All of what I'm talking about is dated. This is the power of imagination. And is it that difficult for us to imagine a world which would have a little bit more peace? That difficult? It's easy for us to use the technology to maneuver a rover on Mars from a small town somewhere in California. But hard to imagine a settled Kashmir or Palestine, my friends. That hard. Can you move to the next slide, please? This is what we've been saying. My screen is not visible, so I can't read. But this is what we've said about all of the things that I'm talking about. There's a need for 5 computers. I think Watson said this. The brightest guy that you knew, Thomas Watson, I think. He said there's probably a need for 5 computers in this world. And what have we been right about? A severe depression like 1920s is outside the range of possibilities. We don't like the sound of group of guitars. This was said about the Beatles. What have we been right about looking forward? But looking backwards? Walking the future backward? Everything, my friends, have fallen into the realm of possibilities. Poverty, hunger, war, blood, everything is in the realm of possibilities. What we lack here is the power of imagination. Next slide, please. Just in Pakistan, because I don't want to give you the examples of just groovy Beatles or computers or Polaroids or whatever not. Just look at Pakistan. Were you able to predict Pakistan of the 60s and the 70s? That distant, legalistic Pakistan of the Qaid? Were you able to predict Roti Kapda Makan? Were you able to predict that Bhutto Saab would stand on a train and rip open his shirt and throw the buttons at people and say, bring these buttons back and I would not disappoint you? Was this conversation possible in Pakistan in the 1960s? Everything in 4 years, 5 years, and he didn't last more than 5, 6 years. Everything changed. Modes of production changed. Modes of distribution changed. Your clothes changed. Who could have imagined that their grandfather or their uncle would wear a pink or orange or blue or yellow-colored shalwar kameez? For men, honorable men, there were only 3 colors: white, gray, Malaysia. And if you were truly flamboyant and everyone looked at you, ooh, look at him, it was that Boski kind of yellowish color. That was flamboyant. 3 colors for men. That's it. The national anthem changed. Wherever you went, the Farsi-inspired national anthem that we have gave its way to Jeeve Jeeve Pakistan, Soni Dharti Allah Rakhe, everywhere. And all this happened in 6 to 7 years. So much for our ability to predict. And if I gave you the Pakistan of the 1970s, would you be able to predict the 80s and the 90s? Kahan par roti, kapda, makan, mazdoor, khoon, pasina, pakad lo, chheen lo, all idioms of violence. Aur kahan pe chadar, char diwari, tahaffuz, Islam, all idioms of containment. And it happened in less than 6 years. Everything changed. Everything went for a 6. So I am not just giving you examples from man on the moon and the man on the Mars. I'm not giving you just examples from Polaroids of the world and from the punk disco era guitarists. I'm giving you examples from Pakistan in your lifetime. Everyone has seen all of this. So with all of these discontinuities, is it that hard for us to imagine one more? A country that we are not? Could it be that hard to imagine? How could be? How could it be? With all of you sitting in this room, with all the horsepower that we have, how difficult could it be to imagine a country with a little bit more peace, a little bit more prosperity, a little bit less polarization, a little bit more development, a little bit more love, affection, and tolerance? All we are asking us to do is to do what we do unto our children every day in our house. How difficult could it be? It's just hard. It's just the dearth of imagination. Could you move to the next one, please? The next slide, please. My belief is that the world is going to change. And my belief is that the world is going to change very fast and very radically. And my belief is that the world is going to change with us or without us. There was a professor who was writing and the chalk fell from his hand. He said, "Damn gravity." Then he bent down and he picked the chalk up and he looked at the class and he said, "But you know what? Gravity doesn't care." So ladies and gentlemen, gravity does not care, with you or without you. The world is changing. My view is there's so many different ways of looking at it, but my view is that this transformation, this platform is grounded on four things, four sciences, four platforms, two hardwares and two softwares. I very firmly believe that the future of atom is going to be defined by nanotechnology. And it's going to lead to the kind of miniaturization that is hard for you to even fathom right now, although all of the science is in place. My belief is that the future of immortality is going to be defined by biotechnology. The cell, which has been decoded, all science is in place. And I am hypothesizing here that very soon, just in the next generation, you'd be treating aging and death, if I could be that bold, as an illness. And it may not happen in some of my lifetime and some of you guys, but that young lady who falsely raised her hand, there's no possibility of her seeing Star Trek 1, would see that in her own lifetime. And my hypothesis is that the science of the science of neurons, compounded with the science of information, the infotech and the cognotech, the softwares which are going to ride on biotech and nanotech are going to transform your understanding of life and death in our lifetime, with us or without us. Why do I say this? Look at nano. This is the picture of an engine which would be built from atoms, various kinds of potassium, sodium, this, that kind of an atoms. This is going to be the future engine of the world. And as we speak, there are insulin pumps that are being made, nano insulin pump, which are going to have biomaterial, which are going to have embedded software and intelligence to figure out your insulin level and biologically secrete that insulin. Is it that far away from the realm of possibilities? It's already happening in labs. You wouldn't be able to tell if your retina is engineering or biology, material science or information technology. What is it going to be? It's going to be a new little thing which is going to be dropped up, and that's it. And I'm not even talking about taking the cell out or the gene out and re-engineering it. The average life of a rat is 1.5 years. The lab rats are already living 3 times their lifespan. The average worm is living 7 times in the lab, 7 times its lifespan. The cancer cells have forgotten to die. Cancer is the cell that has forgotten to commit suicide and continues to replicate. So how difficult is it to treat aging as an illness in times to come? How difficult is it going to be? When we've already found cells that die but don't age, the germinal cells, How difficult is it going to be to treat aging as an illness in times to come? We've been expressing monoclonal antibodies in the ovary line of rats and mice and God knows what else. We've been trying to produce in crops human hormones. So this, my friends, is the future. The future which is going to be partly real and partly virtual, partly miniaturized and partly not, and I don't know what it's going to be. But it is not going to be one thing for sure. It is not going to be the linear continuity of what you have in front of you right now. Because it's growing exponentially. Someone mentioned floppies. One of the gentlemen, you mentioned floppies, sir? Yeah, someone made a rolling mention of floppies. Before floppies, Dr. Saab is sitting there, he knows there were magnetic cards. Magnetic cards with the capacity of 1K, 1,000, 1K. And 512K was the floppy that all of you remember, even the younger ones. And the disk was 1.4 megabytes. And the little thing that I have, which I just used to download my presentation, has 250 gigabytes, is the smaller than the size of my thumbnail. This is the exponential function from 1K to 512 to 1.4 to 250 GB in something that is smaller than your nail. And that's a bit too large. So this exponential change that is on the horizon is moving forward with you or without you. So if you take 30 linear steps just for you to understand what exponential function is, because it's hard to imagine, it's counter-human, intuitive. 30 steps is 30 steps from here to there. But 30 exponential steps is roughly 1.4 billion steps. That is about 23 times walking around the earth. This is the exponential function, and this is the rate at which technology, science, and the future is growing. And we are marred with when we enter into the room, we put our left foot in or right foot in. Is this some kind of joke? Next slide, please. And I would now not get into the details because I've already taken a lot of time. So all of these symptoms, all of these indicators are there. You start with globalization. You already are seeing virtualization of production. You're seeing virtualization of ideologies. All of this, what I have on the slide is product-centric, but you think about the Arab Spring. Think about how all of these people got to that square at the same time. When all telephony was shut down, there was a new way of organizing space, and that was in the social space. That was the social space. This virtualization has already taken place. This virtualization has taken place in products, in services, in ideologies, in our politics, in our life. And green, we already have zero energy cities and towns. Tesla is green. Tesla is the future. And although reluctantly we have come to the coals because we need it, but that's not the future, that's history. And most importantly, democratization of knowledge. It has enfranchised people. This knowledge is democratic, no one can shut it out, and it's all empowering. And it's with you in this lifestyle instrument. Some call it a watch, and some call it a pad, and some call it something else, but it's your lifestyle. You are not disenfranchised, you are now enfranchised and democratized, and no one can stop that. So what is going to happen? You're going to move from borders to boundarylessness. And let me warn you that you're also going to move from man to machine. And let me also warn you that we are going to move from consumption to sustainability. With us or without us. Next slide, please. Actually, skip this slide and go to the next one. And all of this, and I had a whole slide in which I was going to share with you the present, the future present that is happening in the rest of the world. I was going to talk about the refrigerator that speaks to the corner shop and tells that the milk levels have gone down and therefore an order is placed and already your account is debited, and when you come back you already have milk sitting at your doorstep. These things are happening. This is the future now. People are locking, women particularly, are locking their husbands out from their offices. Thank God mine is traveling. And this is not the future now, but the now that we have. The largest infant mortality rates in the world, the largest maternal mortality rates in the world, 70 million some odd people without safe drinking water after the discussion that we've just had. Was it that hard to conceive a country in which children could walk, open up tap and drink a glass of water? That hard? Was it that hard to imagine with our, what is it this called, the planning commissions, and Korea stole something from us and Australia stole something? What is this myth all about? All of those plans that Koreans stole did not include a kid drinking a glass of water? Was it that hard for us to imagine a country where the process of giving birth does not bring death unto a mother? Was it that hard? And just like the grand politics, the theater that my friend just created about the global politics, the microcosm of Pakistan, we can't imagine just these things. We are a nuclear power and our children don't have water. Ironic and bizarre, I must say. Next slide, please. But we have hope. And our hope is that we're going to treat the poor in this country and the disenfranchised in this country, this government is committed to it, not as the producers, not as the cogs and the tools of productivity, but as the consumers of innovation and technology. That's what we are setting out to do. That's what this corridor, whatever you want to call, misnomer, CPAC, IPAC, DPAC, whatever you want to call it, this is our hope. We're actually going to try to create an innovation ecology for the poor, poor-centered innovation ecology. What's wrong with that? This highbrow science, it all has applications for the poor, but only if you look at poor as the consumer. So we treat poor as the consumer. We'd create an ecology which basically empowers them. We're going to transform our productivity systems through health and education. So ladies and gentlemen, we have hope and imagination, and our government is committed to it. Thank you very much.